Good morning, everyone. Virgotriad here. It is July 25th, 2018. Happy Wednesday to everyone. And It's All Gold has once again come through for us and given us some very interesting information with regards to the Randall Keith Beane sentencing that occurred yesterday. Now, we know that Randy was issued 155 months in prison, and he was also given a pretty hefty restitution of over $500,000. In addition to that, he has a 5-year supervised probation period that he must fulfill. So today, what we're going to do is the same thing that we did with the Heather Ann Tucci Giraffe hearing, and we're going to go over what It's All Gold laid out for us here in a couple of different ways. One is the actual kind of like minutes that he provided to us to give us a play-by-play of what happened inside the courtroom yesterday. But then in addition to that, he also provided us a view from above as to what and where everybody was sitting. So I'm going to go over this with you briefly. I'm going to tell you guys once again, if you are interested in getting a copy of It's All Gold's minutes that he put down for us on that are similar to the ones of Heather Ann Tucci Giraffe's trial from last week, or if you are interested in having this diagram, which is the view of the courtroom from, if you were looking at it from above, you can email me at virgotriad@protonmail.com, and I will forward a copy of these to you. All right, so first, let's take a look. One of the things that It's All Gold explained to me in an email where he forwarded these pieces of information to me was that there was an extreme amount of federal employees that were within the courtroom in comparison to the supporters that were in the courtroom. So let's take a look here. We have, of course, this big dot here is the judge, and then we have a recorder on this side, and we have another recorder on this side. We have the bailiff over here, and we have, looks like a secretary over here. Then we have the elbow counsel, and then we have Beane sitting next to the elbow counsel. We have two federal personnel on this side. We have the prosecution over here. We have two federal personnel sitting in this row, two on the other side sitting in this same row. Okay, then we have a federal personnel over here, federal personnel over here. We have this entire row, plus two in the back of federal personnel. And then we have the green dots, which are the supporters. We have where It's All Gold, I'm sure, or an observer, which I'm sure must have been probably him, was sitting. And then we have an unknown older male with a cane that was sitting over here. So we have a very large amount, he's right, of the federal personnel that was in the courtroom. Now, it seems almost, after reading the minutes that It's All Gold sent to me, that there seemed to be maybe some sort of concern as to, perhaps there was a worry that maybe somebody would come in and do something, but there seemed to be an awful lot of federal personnel watching over Randy. So it just was very interesting. He mentions in the minutes that I'm getting ready to read to you that there was someone that was literally just standing behind him the majority of the time. He was apparently completely shackled, belly chain and all. So it appears as though there was a very high level of federal personnel that were watching over in comparison to what we were looking at with the Heather Ann Tucci Giraffe hearing. All right, I'm going to take you guys over to the minutes now, and we'll go over them step by step. Here we are again with It's All Gold's lovely diagram, just like he did for us with Heather Ann Tucci Giraffe. the Heather Antucci Giraffe sentencing, you can see where he has got the federal personnel marked, the supporters marked, the observers both marked. And then, of course, you have the judge, you have Randall Beane and the elbow counsel, the two prosecutors, the two recorders, and everything is where it is supposed to be. Of course, as always, It's All Gold does all of this with precision. Okay, attending, we have 12 federal personnel, FBI marshals seated in the audience, all suits with exception of one female. 2 federal personnel, FBI marshals seated behind the prosecutors, 2 prosecuting attorneys, 2 marshals seated behind Randall Beane, 2 federal personnel, FBI or marshals seated in the upper left, 5, including the judge, 2 court reporters, secretary, and bailiff, 2 Stephen McGrath elbow counsel for Randall Keith Beane and Randall, 6 supporters of Randall Keith Beane, the green dots that you see on the diagram, 1 person that was a yellow dot observer, and 1 person that was an unknown older gentleman with a cane, who is represented by the red dot. The start of the proceedings was at 10 a.m. Let's see. We have at 10:10, the judge explains the order of proceedings. And at 10:10, the prosecution objects to the order to introduce issue of forfeiture, and the DA speaks. Since Mr. R. Beane admits he used Social Security number to obtain funds, and funds were obtained fraudulently, the government seeks to request restitution of $553,749.99. Funds need to be restored to the victim's bank, USAA. The district attorney will request Attorney General restore USAA. Ford Super Duty $85,000 truck was returned to the dealership by Mr. Beane. Beane paid off 4 consumer loans with the funds. Now at 10:15, Mr. R. Beane objects. I have a standing declaration. You, judge, this court, DA, name given, DA, name given, do not have jurisdiction over this alleged trial, crime, hearing, or sentencing. Any proceedings, I do not waive my rights. All documents stand, giving fair notice that all people each are being held accountable. This case was dismissed on January 22nd, 2018. Duly made lawfully, you do not have authority to ask me any questions. Now at 10:17, the judge asked Mr. Beane if he has any preliminary objection to injunction other than what he has previously stated. Mr. R. Beane responds with no. At 10:18, the court does have jurisdiction over these criminal proceedings today. Court rejects objection to jurisdiction. The court grants in favor of prosecution for restitution of $553,749.99 and grants the motion for restitution of $553,749.99. At 10:20, the judge speaks to Mr. Randall Beane, stating he and or the elbow counsel may speak prior to his sentencing. At 10:20, the judge reads counts to Mr. R. Beane. February 1, you were found guilty on 1 through 5 counts of wire fraud. You could be sentenced to 1 up to 20 years for each account, 2, 3 years probation, 3 up to $250,000 restitution, and 4, $100 fine. Do you understand these counts, Mr. R. Beane? At 10:21, Randall Beane, you do not have jurisdiction to ask me that question. Judge then turns to prosecutor to validate the charges. At 10:22, the judge reads the next count to Mr. Beane. You were found guilty on count 6 of bank fraud, sentencing guidelines not recorded. Do you understand these counts, Mr. Beane? At 10:23, R. Beane, you do not have jurisdiction to ask me that question. The judge then turns to the prosecutor to validate the charges. At 10:24, the judge reads the next count to Mr. Beane. You were found guilty on count 7 to commit bank fraud. You could be sentenced to 1, up to 30 years, 2, 5 years probation, 3, up to $1 million restitution, and 4, $100 fine. Do you understand these counts, Mr. Beane? At 10:25, Beane says, you do not have jurisdiction to ask me that question. The judge then turns to the prosecutor to validate the charges. At 10:26, the judge asked both Mr. Beane and prosecutor separately if they had received and reviewed the pre-sentencing report, PSR. Both confirmed separately and had no objections. At 10:27, imposition of sentencing, the prosecution speaks sentence should address deterrence, respect for the law, should run consecutive with resisting arrest in South Carolina and resisting arrest in Tennessee, should run consecutive. 10:28, the judge speaks to Mr. Beane. Is there anything you would like to say in response to the imposition? At 10:29, Mr. Beane, the record states, I resisted arrest in South Carolina, but does not say why I resisted arrest. And for the record, I want to state I resisted arrest in Tennessee. 10:29, judge speaks to Mr. Beane. Is there anything you would like to say? At 10:30, Beane says no. At 10:31, sixth supporter for R. Beane arrives. At 10:31, the judge further explains sentencing according to guidelines and statutes as pertaining to 1, 5 counts of wire fraud, 2, 1 count of bank fraud, 3, 1 count with conspiracy to commit bank fraud. On July 7th of 2017, 1, purchased 40 CDs totaling approximately $38 million. 2, using Social Security number as account and routing number. 3, you did testify to using a video uploaded by Harvey Dent trying the method explained in that video. And 4, Mr. Beane testified saying he kept purchasing so he could see where it all ended. July 5th, 2017, 1, co-defendant was Heather Ann Tucci Giraffe. July 6, 2017, 1, wired funds for RV, July 8th, 10th, and 11th of 2017. Number 1, telephoned Heather Ann Tucci Giraffe. Number 2, Heather Ann Tucci Giraffe advised him to put RV in the name of trust created with his Social Security number. Number 3, Heather Ann Tucci Giraffe was on a conference call with RV Company and relayed to them that it was all legal. And number 4, Mr. Beane purchased a Ford Super Duty truck for $86,000, writing a check. At 10:36, the history of Mr. Beane. Number 1, 50 years old. Number 2, from North Carolina. Number 3, he has 1 brother, 1 sister, primarily raised by his mother. Number 4, he graduated high school in 1985. Number 5, U.S. Army from 1988 to 1993. Number 6, jobs and trades following Army include car detailing, graphic design. Number 7, no physical or mental history. Number 8, small/rare use of marijuana. Number 9, had minor problems with alcohol. And number 10, minor criminal charges passed, including trespassing, driving with no license, driving under the influence of alcohol. Overall, a rating of 2 with the combination of past and present criminal activity. At 10:39, crime constitutes serious action. Sentence must meet guidelines that, number 1, demonstrates respect for law. Number 2, just punishment. Number 3, considers Mr. Beane's lack of respect in regard to jurisdiction. Number 4, need for deterrence. General deterrence for others considering like/similar actions. Number 2, protect general public from defendant present and future. Number 3, since Mr. Beane has no respect for courts, it is the belief of the courts that Mr. Beane would repeat such actions causing harm to others, such as USAA. And number 4, Mr. Beane's belief that the court's lack of authority weighs in the sentencing. It is the belief of the court that Mr. Beane, while imprisoned, would benefit from number 1, education training, and number 2, vocational training. Length of sentencing should not be extended due to any educational and vocational training. At 1042, 155 months, 5 years supervised probation, $553,749.99 restitution, and $700 waivable if unable to pay fine. Any income earned while in prison and upon release is owed to the courts. The sentiment and the mood that was observed by It's All Gold. Mr. Beane was in ankle, wrist, and belly chains. Very little was said by Randy. He repeated himself over and over as shown above. This made it a quicker hearing compared to the last week of Heather Ann Tucci-Giraffe. Elbow counsel did not speak at all. There were no character witnesses. The U.S. Marshal always was 2 to 3 feet behind him as he moved to the podium. He only went to the podium once. Harvey Dent's name was mentioned by the judge. Heather Ann Tucci-Giraffe's sentencing, it was mentioned only by the prosecution. The mood was quiet, more relaxed, yet more federal representatives. Most notable, the amount of governmental personnel versus non-governmental attendees. 24 versus 8, excluding Beane and his elbow counsel. And finally, I exited immediately after the sentencing, says It's All Gold. Once again, I want to thank It's All Gold for this wonderful minute-by-minute, play-by-play of what the Randall Keith Beane sentencing was all about. It was wonderful that you had the opportunity to go and share with us what you witnessed, and I want to thank you very much for your promptness in providing us with this play-by-play in the courtroom, in addition to all the wonderful graphics that you've done and providing us with a very quick response when Randall was handed his sentence so that we knew what was happening at the same time. So this, I think, is something that people have been waiting for. I hope that everybody takes a moment and thanks It's All Gold for the time that he spent to put all of this together and to take off from work to go to this hearing, so we all had the opportunity to get a first-hand account. Once again, everybody have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.